All right, good to be back with you here on YAFFEE Live. I am Tennessee's voice of reason, Chattanooga's conservative conscience. So we have a lot of Tennessee news and politics to get into right now. Brandon Lewis is joining me. He is the founder of the Tennessee Conservative, and you can read his latest stuff, all the latest stuff at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Brandon, how are you, sir?
Glad to be back on the airwaves after an extensive trip to the Lone Star State. I appreciate your indulgence.
Yeah, I saw you went to the Alamo again. Second time you've been there.
I did. Times, and if it weren't for Tennesseans, Texas official language might be Spanish. And so we're always the volunteers that go, and so it's just remarkable to be reminded of our heritage as people that step up when it's called for.
Okay, very interesting. So before we get to some of the Tennessee news items, any thoughts on this federal government shutdown? I mean, knowing you're perfectly fine with it being shut down for a bit.
Perfectly fine. Yes, the longer we could shut it down, the better. Just maybe not even open it back up. I would be okay with it. I don't know that most people's lives would change very much. And so I think that the Republicans just need to hold firm. I've seen this dance played out over and over again, which is ridiculous because they don't go through the budgeting process like they need to. It's their own fault, and the American people are the ones that suffer. But historically speaking, now there have been some changes. The opposing party that does the shutdown when the executive is in office typically sees a dip in the polls. It's one of those kind of dangerous moves by an opposition party. Most of the time it bites them in the butt, but depending on sentiment, occasionally it doesn't seem to make much of a difference.
Yeah, and it's the American people they can have short memories sometimes, so if it doesn't last too long,
very short.
Yeah, who knows? But you're right. Now, I said at the beginning of the show, I think there's a reason why people are calling it the Schumer Shutdown. I just don't think Democrats are winning the PR game this time. That hasn't always been true. Republicans have definitely lost the PR game in the past when it comes to shutdowns. But this time it seems like, I don't know, the Democrats really are being blamed, kind of what you said.
Well, if I had a free hand, I would type it into, because I'm sure they're polling on it already. So if you've got ChatGPT or Grok handy, you could probably type in there and it'll tell you that this is, because people tend to start polling during these shutdowns to see what it's doing one way or the other.
Very interesting. All right, let's get to some Tennessee news here. I see you guys have a story, and I was talking about this a little bit earlier. 53 arrests made and 20 illegal firearms seized in the first 48 hours of the Memphis Safe Task Force operations. And as I reported in the last segment, Pete Hegseth and Pam Bondi were there. What do you think about what's going on?
I absolutely love it. I don't know why Democrats are soft on crime. It does not seem to be a winning issue. And I don't know why Republicans haven't taken the torch on this a long time ago. And so we need to see this in every Democrat-controlled city in Tennessee. Right here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's funny. I pulled up some crime statistics, and basically we've got about 3 or 4 zip codes where all the crime happens. Like, I mean, you could cordon off the area. It's very obvious where the crime is happening. And these are repeat offenders, folks that are in and out of the Tennessee judicial system, like a wash, rinse, repeat. And not only that, the number one crime for zip codes, when you look at it, that where it's committed, it's not that there are people living there committing the crimes. It's that the people living in the zip codes where the most crime happens are going to this zip code to commit their crime. And so we, a lot of Democrat mayors like Tim Kelly will say, as long as we keep the crime out of downtown, as long as we keep the crime out of the commerce area, it's perfectly fine. And we only have to keep it clean for the tourism dollars come in. But who cares about the rest of the residents in Hamilton County? But as you see from the crime statistics, it's not just the people in those zip codes that are suffering. The folks that are doing the crimes are going into other zip codes that are very low crime organically, and they're bringing the crime. And so they need to step it up. And I understand that the police chief serves at the behest of Tim Kelly, but it seems like the duty of a law officer should supersede the paycheck. And somebody needs to step up and start speaking out about crime in Tennessee and in Chattanooga in particular, and actually do something about it.
Did you see that story I talked about a couple weeks ago where a guy in Chattanooga was trying to carjack a woman's car with kids in it. And thank God there was a retired police officer who happened to take a wrong turn, went by, he was carrying, and was able to stop the guy from carjacking. That happened right outside the Creative Discovery Museums. You talk about crime in downtown. And, at least the example there was it was a good guy with a gun stopping a bad guy.
The negligence is just disgusting. It's the reason I moved out of downtown. I mean, you have to do a really bad job for people to flee. And most of the folks that live downtown, they live down there when they're single. And then there comes a point where they want to raise their kids up, and then they flee. They go to 37421. They go to Ottawa. They go to Saudi Daisy. They go to Lookout Mountain and Signal Mountain, because the only way to get away from crime in Tim Kelly's Chattanooga is to buy your way out and to relocate yourself. And we've seen historically what happens when this is neglected. All the wealth, all the businesses. Brainerd Road, when I first went there, and it went through a little renaissance, used to be full of businesses. And now you've got these big, huge, blackout places. It looks like somebody smiling with half their teeth missing as you drive down the road. And you can look around at the quality of life issues that are causing it. I'll tell you this story. One time I took a picture of somebody, the homeless person, just sprawled out with all kinds of trash in front of a commercial for lease sign. And I posted it on Nextdoor, and I said, I can't imagine why this person on Brainerd Road is having a hard time leasing their commercial space. Does anybody have any ideas? Well, that was hate speech. It got me kicked off Nextdoor. But these quality of life issues have a huge economic and crime impact, and it's time somebody takes leadership role. And maybe it needs to be somebody in our delegation, Bo Watson, Todd Gardenhire, whoever has downtown, whoever has these crime areas, to do what Brent Taylor is doing in Memphis by advocating constantly and continually about crime. We need a state level advocate in Chattanooga to do the same for Hamilton County.
Well, I'll have to get those state lawmakers on and see what they say, because I think that's a good idea.
You should say, why aren't we doing what Brent Taylor's doing in Memphis? It needs to be done. Speaking
with Brandon Lewis, he's the founder of the Tennessee Conservative. Looking at some other stories you have here, I see we have a new poll out by Vanderbilt that said Republicans and Democrats differ on belief in higher education bias. I guess that's not too surprising, but what does this say?
Yes, the headline could have also read "Bear Craps in Woods."
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So it's 79% of Republicans and 54% of Democrats think that there is bias in education, and that is interesting to me because I love when I see a crossover issue. As a Republican, when you see a crossover issue when 54% of the other side agrees with you, that is not always the case, and it is not always the case. That's why the whole transgender sports thing is constantly hammered by Trump, because it's only a small little margin of Democrats that even think that's a good idea. It's like 80-some-odd% are like, no, that doesn't even make any sense. They can't even be radicalized that far yet. And so this is one of those issues that they should really push. Now, one thing is that I thought was interesting, that respondents blame the bias with administrators and not professors or instructors, and I would say that's BS. When you see people physically doing it in the classroom and it's not the administrators, how is that not the teacher? And if you feel like that's okay to put in front and on kids, like, you are somehow inferior because of the color of your skin. I can't believe we let racism get back into the schools after about 20 or 30 years of a respite. It's like we just take the racism lens and they just keep moving it to somebody else's skin color. It's
Yep.
It's like spin the wheel. And so at any rate, it was interesting to see that. And 47, this is kind of interesting. 40%, only 40% completely on both sides said that they had confidence that a college education prepares students for a successful career, while 47% said they still had confidence in the colleges and universities. And so there's a 7-point spread between we like them in general, and then when you ask them, would it actually do the thing that it is made to do, which is to prepare you for a career, if they lose 7 points, which is over 25% of the people, like, wait a minute, when you ask them what the goal is, and to me, in every institution, if you don't ask yourself what the goal is first, what's the purpose of the institution? And I think a lot of this is just guilt from having spent time and money in something that you know probably wasn't helpful. And it's also the social aspect. You know, everybody wants to tell everybody, oh, my daughter or my son, they got into this, that, and the other. So it's more of a virtue signaling and a status rite of passage than it is preparing people for an education anymore.
You know, I got to say, I think that's changing, though, for a lot of people because, yeah, I mean, even when I was younger and I went to college, you know, I think that was the normal status thing, like you said. But, you know, even now, like, I'm sure when my daughter gets old enough, it might not be where I might be like, I'm not going to be as big a, you have to go to college, depending on what she wants to do. But I think that's changing for a lot of people.
I believe it is. You know, we homeschool our kids. I enjoy that lifestyle. I think that your school should revolve around life. Your life shouldn't revolve around school, which is how it was for eons up until about 50 years ago. People think it's normal. It's not. It's abnormal historically that we send our kids to the government for 8 hours a day for them to be instructed by a stranger. Like, it is not normal. And so I think we should get back to more of that. And to your point with my daughter, I hope she doesn't want to go to college. If we can determine what she wants to do with her life or give her opportunities to physically go do the job or shadow people and then determine what she wants to do and then go down the course of action, that is a lot better than just, you know, wasting 4 years of your life thinking that you're on a career course you want, because so many people never use the degree they've gotten. And in the case of running a small business after getting an undergraduate and a master's, it wasn't helpful. Like, I could not run my business on what I learned in school after 6 years. I had to go out and find sources of people that had actually done it with systems that truly work. And that's what I teach my clients at the Painters Academy. And so hopefully there will be some changes and some sea changes indeed on this issue, because I don't think it's serving us as well as it could.
Well, I think, and one of the biggest reasons why there's such a sea change is it's just too expensive. I mean, the average person just can't afford it anymore.
It just inflates. I mean, you look at the inflation rate on everything else, higher education, and I think medical expenses inflate. Like they have their own little inflation thing. Like, they just do whatever they want to. And, you know, what's involved there? Subsidies, big insurance, big government, large institutions. You know, the bigger organizations get and the more intertwined they are and the more separated they are from the true economy, the more likely they are to get to where they serve themselves instead of their constituents, which is what we have in both of those industries right now.
100% right. Brandon Lewis is the founder of the Tennessee Conservative. Our weekly conversation will be on the site tomorrow, TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Brandon, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week.
Go get them, Yaffee.
All right, there. I'm trying.